Welcome to you all. I'm Mort Scalt, Chair of the Cinema Society, and I'm again being joined in this Zoom presentation by my colleague, Phil Douglas. In addition to Phil and myself, I want to welcome Helen Stevenson, who will be our presenter this afternoon. Helen lives in Prescott and is the founder and executive director of the Prescott Film Festival. I met Helen when I first heard about this past year about the festival and was very excited to contact her and see what this was all about. I did do so, and after telling her about our wonderful community and our film society, she was really enthusiastically excited about becoming one of our facilitators and lecturers, and we're very, very happy to have her. Helen is an Arizona native, and she graduated from Cal State, received a master's degree in American Media and Popular Culture from ASU. She is an Emmy award-winning producer and director who has been in the film and video business for over 30 years. Well, I'm sure by now you all are used to having Zoom presentation, which is this. However, it is not quite the way it used to be with the interactive discussions that we used to have. But remember that you can still participate by submitting your comments throughout this presentation on your computer or other device that you have. Just click on the chat icon on your screen, type your question either with your fingers, or if you used to be a secretary or somebody who was very capable, you can type it in and then tap enter on your keyboard. You can also use the chat room by clicking on the hand icon and make your comments at the time that you're called upon by the moderator. Now to our film, and we're talking about Harry and Snowman, which came out in 2015 and which was selected by Helen for your viewing pleasure. In that regard, we have a very big surprise for you this afternoon. Not only will she be sharing her insights about the film with all of us, she's invited Ron Davis to join in her presentation. Who's Ron Davis? He is none other than the writer, director, and producer of Harry and Snowman, and we're delighted to have him join us. So let us welcome Helen and Ron for their presentation this afternoon. Helen, take it away.
Okay, thank you so much, Ron. I really appreciate it. And thank you to Mort and Phil for inviting me to be a part of this. It is truly an honor. Both those gentlemen just pour their hearts into this, and you can tell. It shows in the end product. It's and the time they pour into it. Mort and Phil and I spent several hours going over what film we should do, and we're going back and forth, and finally one of them said, "What is your passion? Pick a film that's in your passion." Now, my passion's not in horses. I'm scared to death of horses, but my passion is in independent film and finding ways to support independent filmmakers. Because a studio film is made by a committee, and an independent film is made by an individual. And that individual passion and dedication to the story and to getting it right and to being a little bit unique, that comes through in independent films. And it really came across in Harry and Snowman. The New York Times critic reviewed Harry and Snowman, and I'm going to quote here. Her name is Helen T. Vergnos, and she said, "In the film, a student of Mr. Delayer's recalls some of his advice. Throw your heart over the top and your horse will follow. Harry and Snowman makes you want to do the same."
Boy.
Yes, and it truly does. There's so many things to unpack in this film. Harry's work for the resistance during World War II. Why was he not wanting to share that? Ron, it seems, had to go to a friend of Harry's to find that information out. The kindness of strangers, the kindness of his wife to bury that young soldier. And that led to other kindness, which was the soldier's parents sponsoring Harry and his wife to come to the United States. His life as an immigrant, his determination, his hard work, his persistence, his passion, putting his children to work, which I was one of 6, and I think putting your children to work is good. I grew up on 40 acres. So I've been there. And animal rescue during both during the war, during the resistance, and also rescuing snowman. So I wanted to start this discussion by asking Ron if he could tell us about the journey he took on getting this film to the screen, starting with how he found out about the story.
Sure. Well,
Also, was
thank
he
you,
a
Helen,
writer?
and
Does he
Phil.
write?
I'm sorry.
Are you a horseman yourself?
I was a horseman back in the 80s and the 90s. I didn't know Snowman, but I knew Harry Dallaire. I knew him as the Galloping Grandfather from Madison Square Garden. So yeah, that was pretty much all I knew. I had never even heard the Snowman story until the book came out, The $80 Champion. And when that book came out, I was going on one of my dog walks, because I have 4 of them, and with a friend of mine, and she said, you know, if you're looking for another film, you should consider doing the Harry Dallaire and Snowman story. And I said, I don't even know what that is. So I said, are you talking about the Galloping Grandfather? And she gave me sort of the elevator pitch on the story. And I thought, oh my God, this is great. I mean, this is sort of tailor-made. I love heartfelt stories that have lots of drama, that, you know, underdog stories are one of my favorites. So it had all the elements that would work for me in the next film. So it became my next film. And I reached out to Harry Dallaire, as Helen said, through a friend, and I got on the phone. I said, how would you like to make a movie about your life? And no surprise to everybody, he went, absolutely, let's start tomorrow.
Great, wonderful.
That's great. Now, I want to make sure that we get to participants' questions. So if you guys want to give us a few of those, why don't you give us 3 questions from the audience?
Phil, do you want me to go, or do you want to take it?
You can go, Mark.
Well, you know, the story is about this Amish plow horse. I mean, which sounds like a horse that really pulled the plow and probably couldn't jump 2 feet. And he bought it for $80 instead of it going to the glue factory. And that took an awful lot of foresight. And did he have a background where perhaps he would know what he was buying, or was it just or did he think that he was getting another plow horse for his farm?
No, it's a good question. Harry had an innate ability to connect with animals and to understand what might be the right kind of animal. Now, did Harry was he talented enough to look into Snowman's eye and see a great jumper? Absolutely not. That was not what he was looking for. He went to that auction for his riding program. He had a riding program, and he was looking for, and I can't remember if I left this part in the movie or not, but I remember when he said it to me. He said, I was looking for a horse that could handle the big, heavy girls that didn't know how to ride and would be really quiet and good. And so when he saw Snowman on the trailer, you know, he got there late, as everybody knows who's seen the film, and they know why. And there was he honestly really saw something in the eye, and he thought, that's going to be a great horse for the beginner riders that are not talented, that are too heavy to be on the back of a horse. And that's really all he was thinking. He wasn't thinking beyond that. He wasn't at the auction looking for the next great jumper, the next great, phenomenal horse.
So he wasn't thinking about it as being a Cinderella horse that all of a sudden was going to be a world champion at all.
No, he was thinking he had a girls' school full of girls, and he was short a horse, and he needed another horse, and he needed something that was going to be safe and quiet and reliable and dependable for these wealthy girls, and so they weren't going to get hurt.
So when did he change his mind and all of a sudden did he explain to you, was it like the light bulb going off that all of a sudden he said this horse could be a jumper, or did he?
It was an evolution. It was definitely, because he did a job for a whole year, and they weren't jumping him around. Harry wasn't riding him and showing him. He did his dutiful job, trucking these girls around over jumps and in their lessons, and then he sold him. Harry he'll be the first to admit, he was an idiot. He had no idea what he had there. Snowman knew what was going on and what the business was, because he kept coming home, but Harry let him go. Harry was a horseman, and a horseman buys a horse for $80 and can sell him for $160 a year later. That's a business deal. And that's
Wow.
great. It wasn't until Snowman kept coming home and coming home that he realized, wait a minute, like that's when the light bulb went off about the relationship. And then from there, the fact that he was, jumping and jumping out of his pasture, and he would take him, then once he got him back, he would take him fox hunting. And it just sort of, it evolved. It was an evolutionary process to go from plow horse to world-class jumping horse. But the relationship part came first.
Did you really, who got that picture of Snowman jumping over the fence with a tire tucked underneath his, is that for real?
That, the picture of him jumping over the fence,
Yeah.
actually, it says a lot to the filmmaking and my team that you believe that you saw him jumping over the fence with the tire, because the picture is literally him just jumping over the fence. The next shot was a recreation of a white horse with a tire tied to it. So the fact that your brain did that, it worked. Because Life magazine shot him jumping over the fence. They came out back in 1960 or 1962 it was. And they did a whole photo shoot with Snowman, and they put him out in the field and said to Harry, make him jump around. And he got him jump from paddock to paddock to paddock. So that's where the picture came from. But the tire and the white horse in the field was a recreation to try to connect, to allow the viewer and the audience to go onto that journey.
Sure. That's one thing that Phil will comment about, and that's the pacing of this documentary that you did. There are a lot of documentaries, a lot of films that hold suspense, that something's going to happen off in the future that they aspire to, and everything, and you hear the drums roll and all that sort of thing. And this was just sort of like you were the other voice. You were observing the evolution of this horse as though things were moving along in a very regular way. And I know both Phil and I really admired that type of documentary where it didn't have an agenda. It didn't have a message that you wanted to convey as specifically other than the humanity of this man and his relationship with the horse and the way he got his family involved. So
for me, it could have gone, depending on the filmmaker, depending on my mood, how I saw it. It could have been about rescue. It could have been about family. It could have been about show jumping. It could have been about competition. It could have been about many things. But at the core, for me, it was just about this relationship,
right,
that they had, and the life-changing evolution of that relationship and the bond that it had, which is what attracted me to the whole thing. And so when it did veer off into other areas, whether it was about him as a dad or rescue, they were just a part of it. And I allow the audience to just sort of absorb it in their own way versus hitting them over the head and saying, rescuing horses is better. And
or looking to the competition of, or looking to the issue of competition up to the big one, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I think that with the humanity of the film itself came through so dramatically. It really did.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Because
Humanity
that's what
of Harry. What?
I said, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry. I said, I'm just glad that came through, because that's what, I want to come through. That as a filmmaker, there's a million ways to screw it up. And there's really only a couple of ways if you do it right with the right editor and the right producers and the right team, because it's a team effort. It's not, I'd love to sit here and pat myself on the back all day and say I'm brilliant.
Well, we are.
But thank you. But
the comments we've gotten from our residents has been phenomenal. I mean, it wasn't, they just liked it. They loved it.
That's good. I'm glad to hear it, because it's, it's a great story. And one of the fun things about this movie was when it was finished, when we got to tour the country on the film festival circuit with Harry, and to be able to watch him stand up in front of 1,000 people and get a standing ovation was really as a filmmaker, that was a remarkable feeling, because you're always looking for a documentary to have an impact in some way, but usually it's not measurable. This was measurable. You could see the love and the adulation that he was getting, and that what it meant to him to validate his life, his work, his choices, his relationship, all of it.
That's right. But you also were portraying a human being with his flaws and shortcomings, particularly in relationship to his family and his children. And that certainly came through. I mean, he wasn't perfect. And even though he had hero aspects to him, there was another side, a darker side, but
But
nevertheless.
we all have that. You know, everybody has multiple sides, and you can take a sliver of someone's life and blow it up into a 90-minute movie and paint the person one way, but there's, you know, another 100 slivers that are the same person.
Yeah, I think that's true. And there's also something else that bothers me a great deal, and when they call them documentaries, because people go to them thinking that they're objective and there's no actors involved, and that sort of thing, like Michael Moore. And the thing that struck me was there wasn't an agenda here. There was not a message other than the fact that you wanted to show a human being and his relationship with an animal, and someone who certainly we could identify with, and was certainly not perfect.
The name of my company is Docutainment. I like documentaries that are entertaining. First and foremost, it has to be entertaining, because a lot of documentaries are not. I call it docu-boring. But the topic could be quite interesting and quite fascinating. But I like, for example, if you were to take somebody to a documentary on a Friday night on a first date, there's a good chance you probably won't get a second date. I like my films to be the kind that you could get a second date, because you felt good, you went high, you went low, you felt, you know, all kinds of different things. But ultimately, I want it to be an entertaining experience about a real life story, because I find real life more interesting than, you know, make believe.
Well, and not only that, but whoever you used as an editor, they did a superb job. I mean, the idea of using the home movies was a great touch, particularly with a trailer with a click, click, click. That took me back to my days of my own home movies that were far
Now,
less
that
than
trailer,
perfect.
just so you know, that trailer was a recreation.
Oh, really?
Because if you think about it, in 1950, was it 6, when he bought the horse, or 57, nobody would have spent the money to go to an auction with a movie camera when they were looking for a plow horse, you know, an ex-plow horse.
Right.
They only started filming Snowman when he got home, when there was a lot of wealthy kids there riding him, when he got famous. So we recreated with an old 16mm camera some of those shots to give you the sense that you were there back in the 50s. We made a conscious effort not to fake any of the Snowman footage where he was running, showing, competing, being himself. But we did the earlier, you know, standing there on the trailer, getting washed. The early stuff when there would never have been a camera, we shot that. So I'm glad it worked. I'm glad that you couldn't really tell.
But it's not only the editing, but the sound and music that you used was just, it was so compatible and fit. Which I, after seeing it 3 times, I got something that was remarkable. And there was that scene of Snowman with 6 or 8 of the children on his back in the water. And there are 30, I would say 30 yards away. And then what you did is you dubbed in the sound of slushing through the water. And that I thought was that was genius.
We had a really great sound. We call this as sound design for people who don't know what the different parts are. But most of the footage was from the 50s and the early 60s, so there was no sound. So we had to get a sound designer to come in, like you see in the movies, and they clunk, 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 and do all that, make all the noises. Then we had a composer come in and compose with an orchestra in Romania, I think it was, and create the music behind it. For example, that black and white scene where all the music drops out and Snowman's galloping around Madison Square Garden, that was dead silent. We had to add in the sound of the crowd, the sound of the tension, the sound of the foot beats, and the foot beats getting further away and getting closer. We had to, you know, all that had to be added in with the designer to create that suspense.
I mean, how long did it take to make this movie?
It took to edit it, a year and a half. It took 3 editors, 2 composers. It took a big team because it wasn't working. It was turning out a little too schmaltzy, a little too sweet, the music was too, it was a very difficult balance to make it not too sweet, not schmaltzy, or, you know, to make it not too masculine, not too feminine, but to just sort of ride the middle, right? You know, no pun intended, but ride the fence. And it took a big team, so it took about a year and a half to get it right. And it was wrong so many times. I remember the first cut that I had, I showed some people, I was very excited about it. And then we finished it and they looked and they went, it's kind of boring. And I was mortifying because until a documentary, because I can't speak to feature film, but until a documentary, until it's done, when you feel like it's right, it's wrong. It's totally wrong. And Helen knows this. It's, disastrous. And anybody who's seen the finished movie would never believe how bad it could have been.
That's wonderful. Yet it was also amazing to me and others, the amount of research that you must have been able to do in archives. I mean, to dig up that old television black and white program of What's My Line? And,
That's actually not that difficult to do because there's producers that you hire that do archival, and their job is to go out and you give them a topic. I said, Harry Delaire, Snowman, you give them a date, within this 5-year period. And they go to the National Archives, they go to every television show that you think of, and they find it. And the one thing we couldn't find was the Johnny Carson appearance, because I forget, it wasn't the Johnny Carson show, it was another show at the time that Johnny was headlining, and they didn't keep the footage anymore. It was, tape. But I tried really hard. I wanted to see Johnny Carson climb on that horse, but we weren't able to find it.
But nevertheless, they did a great job. I mean, even the material that they got for you on the Second World War of parachute jumping.
Oh yeah.
And the farm in Holland. I mean, that was superb.
All from National Archives. We knew exactly what the scenes were going to be, the story they were going to tell, and then we had to find footage to match it. I mean, I remember at the beginning, one of the first cuts, I accidentally had Nazi planes in it. You get so wrapped up in something, you don't notice that you got the wrong planes. I had the wrong side.
Remarkable. And the humanity of Harry and his family was so poignant and brought through about that scene where they were hiding some Jews, which they didn't have to do. And I guess you asked Harry whether his father had been a spy, and he says, no, it's something I can't discuss.
Right.
And
that was Dick Cavett who asked that.
But that was so poignant and very.
I did ask him that. He wouldn't talk about it though. Harry did not like to talk about. Now the way it's cut in the movie, it seems like he's very open about the war, about saving the Jews and the Nazis. But in real life, that was a very difficult interview we did for about an hour and a half. And at the end of it, I thought we had nothing because he was so walled up and protected. He does not like to talk about the war. He does not like to talk about Germany. He does not. But we were able to pull out little nuggets that when you landed them, they made a real impact in the film. But overall, that was not something he was comfortable. It was not it was not an easy interview, and he didn't give us a lot of great information. He averted answering a lot of questions.
Beautiful, wonderful. It was great. I see that there's a question that came in. I see it on the screen, but it's no longer on the screen. Helen, do you see it? Helen, do you see the question that came in on the screen?
Helen's muted. I think you can't unmute.
Okay.
Here you
Now I am. Yes, it said, the question is, why do only 2 of his children speak in the film, and what is the relationship with the other children?
That's a very good question, and I will answer that. It is a documentary, so our budgets are not feature film budgets. And when you have 8 children, we had to make some choices on who was closer, who we could do it effectively from a budget standpoint. And we felt that the 3 kids, there was actually 3 kids, it was 2 sons and the daughter, that we felt told the story so well that flying around the rest of the country in order to get them to say the same things would be confusing, to have so many heads on the screen, that's just a lot of kids. And they did such a good job. But that was the only reason. There was no one said no, we didn't even approach the other kids, because once I had met the 3, and Harriet was really leading her way through, carrying a lot of the film, we felt that we had enough. And his relationship with his other kids were, in some cases, the same as the three, in some cases more strained. I think also the horse world is a really brutal place to work in, and a lot of his kids worked in the horse world, and he lives on the East Coast. Some of them lived in Texas. I think it was just a logistical thing of not being able to spend a lot of time with each other. But I only met them a couple of times during some of the film festival screenings, but they all came to support. We actually interviewed Anna Marie, the daughter who got hurt, but we just felt that we didn't put her in the film because she was so young. She was post Snowman, really, because she was the first wave of kids who really knew the Snowman story were the three that we put in it. Then there was this, a second wave of children that we didn't feel could tell the Snowman story because they weren't there. They were recollecting stories that they heard, and we really wanted like Harriet and Marty, who remember Snowman coming in, who they could give a firsthand account of that story. So that's sort of how we made those choices.
Okay.
That's
So
why-
his
Go ahead.
wife, they got divorced, and then she passed away in 2012. There was nothing about her after she died. Was that an editorial choice, or what was that?
Well, unfortunately, I never had a chance to meet her because she had died the year before we started to make the film. And I just didn't want to get in. I didn't feel it was fair to her to tell her story without any part of her story, other than as it related to the family, as it related to Snowman. I didn't, especially since it was a very, very bitter divorce. And I just didn't think it was fair to go that direction without her. And it wasn't about that, what I mean? Everybody not everybody, but divorces are not friendly, So I didn't think that what I could get out of everybody was going to really put her in the best light. And it just didn't seem to make sense to me to do that to her. She had her role. She raised all the children. She supported Harry. They were a family unit until they weren't. And, that's the case for so many people in the country. And it just didn't feel relevant to me.
Okay, that makes complete sense. I think just to go back for a second about the editor, your editor that you ended up with was amazing. I don't know how many times I've seen the film, maybe 4 or 5, and I watched it again just before this so I could, get refreshed on everything. And the first time Harry and Snowman go to Madison Square Garden, I'm sitting there, I know how it ends, but I'm holding my breath. I'm literally holding my breath. So.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah. We have another question from the audience. It says, you have completed 2 films involving rescued animals. Are you personally involved in rescue organizations?
That's a great question and a good observation. I've also done 2 pageant films, and both scenarios are by total accident. I'm not interested in pageants, and I'm not involved in rescue. They were just stories that came to me, that touched me, that I felt I could actually tell, and I could tell in a very hopefully moving way. I have 4 rescue dogs, and I'm thrilled that I was able to put their story up on the screen, because that movie, it's called Life in the Doghouse, which is on Netflix now. That movie changed their life. It changed the rescue life. It raised more money, more awareness for that particular rescue than I could have ever imagined. It's been seen by over 3 million people. I think they raised $500,000 in the first 15 days on Netflix. I mean, it really made a difference, which was, phenomenal. So I don't see them as 2 rescue films. I saw, both films are, Harry Snowman is a rescued horse, but it's the story of Harry and Snowman. Life in the Doghouse is about Danny and Ron and Danny and Ron's rescue, but it's really about their journey and how they did it and what they did. And hopefully people will look at that movie and say, wow, these 2 guys are amazing, and then inspire you to do something. And I don't know what that something is, because it's different for everybody else. Some people it's rescue a dog, some people it's volunteer, some people it's give money. So, that's sort of the connection between all of them.
It is.
I was going to say Life in the Doghouse was also allowed to be shown, and I think won a audience prize in Sedona at the Sedona Film Festival, because I remember seeing it, but I didn't associate you with it at all until you had mentioned it in our conversation the other day. And so I went back and played, and I said, wait a second, I saw this at the Sedona Film Festival. And it was a wonderful film. But it also was about relationships with animals and interpersonal relationships with others. And I think that really comes through in this particular film that you did in a different way. And that, to me, really grabbed it, because a person who knows nothing about horse jumping, nothing whatsoever, and perhaps may have even seen a horse in the movies or with John Wayne, or maybe passed a farm and saw a horse and had no connection whatsoever, the film can be seen at that level by somebody who knows nothing about the techniques of horse jumping whatsoever. And on the other hand,
that's a fair assessment. But I do that with all of the films on purpose. So I make films that are about niche, niche industries or people within niche hobbies. But if you make a film about horses for the horse world, it's going to bomb because it's too niche, it's too small. You need to make it appealing to everyone. The same thing with the rescue film. If I did a film about dog rescue and I beat you over the head for 90 minutes about all the dog rescue issues, the dog rescue people would love it, but most people wouldn't. So I put the dog rescue issues in it, but I put them on the back burner so that they're there for you to process in any way you want. Same thing with Snowman, all the different issues, you process it any way you want, but it just hopefully should open up a world and bring an audience into a world that they most likely have never been into.
I had a discussion with an urban, I can't remember which film festival he was from, but a director from an urban film festival. And we had both screened Harry and Snowman. And I said, oh, my horse people loved it. We sold out an 1,100 seat theater. And then what that film did, by the way, thank you very much. If we sell out the theater, we've paid for our entire 10-day festival. So thank you, Harry and Snowman, because that's what happened for us. So, but we marketed it as a horse film because we're in Prescott and this is Horse Central. But the Urban Film Festival director said that he kept telling people, no, it's a story about a person. It's human, it's connected. It's the horse is in the background, but the true story is humanity. And you pulled it off because we both did well with the film.
Oh, that's great. That movie did well for film festivals. It did well in the theaters. I was very proud of the success that it had. Really, in a lot of documentaries don't get that kind of success because they get trapped in their little niches, and they only get seen by certain people. So it was very, it was a great feeling to ride along that one.
were people who were horse jumpers very suspect or cynical about the film and, well, that isn't the way it works at all, or look at that jump, that wasn't really, that must have been staged because that wasn't very good? I mean, did you get?
No, because you remember I said earlier that we didn't do any recreation of jumping. We didn't do any recreation of competition. All that was really Snowman, so that no one could take that away from the film. And the horse world really opened up to it. I think the only criticism I would get was from people who maybe knew Harry back in the day, and they'd say, "Well, he wasn't that great," or he was, and he was an SOB. You made him a lot nicer.
Sour grapes.
Yeah, a little bit of that. People who knew him and went to horse shows with him for 40 years, who just saw him as another competitor or just saw him as, another horse show figure, didn't see him as this guy up on a pedestal the way that the audience was seeing him. That was the only criticism that I got.
How about that one scene where Harry said he had done everything that could possibly be done. He won all the awards that you could possibly win. And where do I go from here? And he had the horse jumping over a horse. And that scene. Tell us about that scene.
Harry I mean, if you've seen the movie, he was a big ham. Everybody knows that. There's no question about it. He was a showman. And he was a showman all the way till the end when I was filming. I mean, he was almost 90 years old and he insisted on getting on and riding.
Was that authentic though? Was that
authentically who he was? He's a showman and he was always trying to come up with in new ways, but jumping over another horse. Remember, he came from Holland as a kid, where he just rode from the bootstraps. And I mean, I had pictures of him that didn't make it in the movie, of him with 4 or 5 horses, all in tow, and like the bridles and the reins, and Harry is standing on the back of one of them and galloping them all around as if he's, you know, riding in a carriage without a carriage. I mean, that's the way he was brought up. That's how he was around horses. So jumping over another horse to him wasn't a shtick. It was just like, how can I entertain people and do something I've probably done my entire life?
Amazing.
We have another question from the audience. How is a film like this financed? Did the horse world provide Harry any other entree into New York society? So 2 questions.
So the first one is, how do I raise money? I beg. Raising money is the hardest part. When you're a filmmaker, a documentary filmmaker, or an independent filmmaker, you know, 50% of your business is being a development director and raising money. The other 50% is being creative and making the movie, and most of the time that's an easier part. I apologize for my 4 dogs barking, if you can hear that. So we raised money through, I had a couple of investors. We did Kickstarter campaigns, which were crowdfunding campaigns where people all chipped in $100 and they got a free copy of the movie when it was finished. We raised a ton of money that way. So that's how we raised the money to get the film done. And there were so many fans of Harry and Snowman that wanted to see the movie, wanted to see it in Harry's words. They wanted to see Snowman again. So that really helped. Now, what was the second question again? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Did the horse world provide Harry any other entree to New York society?
You know, his entree into New York, real society doesn't let you in. They let you sort of walk through it. Either you're in society or you're not. So Harry was allowed to be in it because he was teaching, you know, the wealthiest and the high society kids. So he was in it as their trainer, but he was never in it. You know, you can't sort of, it's hierarchical. So he wasn't in, but he was on the outskirts and as close as you could get, because he was helping, you know, when you can help high society's dreams come true in the show ring, you get in pretty close. And that's what he did for his entire life.
Okay. So when I was looking up things just today for last minute info on Amazon Prime, it shows a special director's edition of the film. Can you tell us about that?
I don't remember. I will tell you this. I believe that the director's edition, I actually don't remember. There's nothing in the director's edition. There might have been like some Q&A of me that the distributor put onto the DVD or onto it, but nobody missed out on anything. You got to see everything that was good was put in the movie. There was no extra scenes or, you know, there was none of that. It was I know there was an interview with me, an interview with Harriet, just to sort of go a little further, but you didn't miss, the film was no different than the film that you saw in the regular cut.
Now, when we as an audience watch the film on Amazon or Netflix, do you get brownie points or financial points, or does this help you raise money if you've got a lot of views on your films?
Any success helps you make your next film. That's without a doubt. It helps you, it gives you the credibility to make the next film. People want to get on board with someone who's successful, but you have to sort of do it quickly while you're riding high. So yeah, it does help. It's not like I get a nickel every time it plays on Netflix. It doesn't work that way. But it does help. For example, that distributor that did who sold or distributed Harry and Snowman, did so well with it. They said, what do you have on the back burner? So that was Life in the Doghouse. So they bought Life in the Doghouse. So it absolutely does help. It doesn't make it necessarily easier, because you still have to go back and start all over again and raise money for a movie that's not Harry and Snowman. It's about dog rescue. So it's an entirely different group of people. So you're not reinventing the wheel, but it's a brand new wheel that you have to get rolling.
Yeah.
I hope that made sense.
It
That does make sense. Yes.
Very much so.
I have a question. The last scene, that's the one that sticks in my mind when he comes to the grave. Was this arranged, or was this a normal part of Harry's life that you were covering, or did you feel this would be a good way to end the film? So did you ask him to recreate a visit to the grave?
Well, that's a great question because it's one of the strongest, most emotional scenes in the whole film. When we were making the film and doing the interviews, he told me, because he lived in Virginia at the time, Snowman was buried up in Long Island. And he told me that he had not been to Snowman's grave in 35 plus years. And I asked him, I said, well, how would you like to go there and see him? And he said, I would love it. I said, well, we'll organize it if we can film you doing it. And he said, okay. And what we did that day, because I wanted it to be authentic, I didn't want it to be staged or set up.
Right.
Excuse me. So we went to the top of this hill. We knew Snowman was buried at the bottom. And we had the camera out, and I said to Harry, the only direction was, this is your moment with your friend. Don't worry about us. Don't let us get in the way. Do whatever you want to do and go say hi to your friend. And what you saw happen is exactly what happened. He walked down there. He hadn't been there in all those years. It was just, we did it in one take. And it was just that, he took his hat off. He cried, he shed a tear. It was very authentic and real. And I knew, I'm getting sort of chills now because I remember when it happened, I was going.
So that could have been so fake. It could have been so schmaltzy, but it was so real.
And that's because it was real. It was 100% real. We did it one time and that was it. And then I left him, and then we left. We actually went away with the camera and he stayed for a few more moments and just, and reflected on his life. Because I can't imagine what it'd be like to be 90 years old and have your whole life, professional life that is, anchored in one relationship.
And you chose to end the film there. And that was, I thought, a stroke of genius too.
Thank you.
He had the last word. And the last word was this.
Was where I would use it. I did not know that it was going to be the ending. I thought it would be either the launching pad for the beginning to leave people wondering like, wow, what's this all about? So we tried it a couple of times at the beginning of the film, but you weren't invested enough in who Harry was and what he had done and what he had been through to really feel the impact of that moment. So we decided to make it the final moment.
Well, not only that, but what he said, which was very simple, very few words. And he said, you made me.
Mm-hmm.
You made me. That's all.
Was it.
And those words, I think the economy of words is very important. And he didn't have to say a lot, but those three words said it all.
And more, the title was Harry and Snowman. That was the title of the film. And those last words sum that up.
Yeah, I agree.
Perfect.
I haven't seen the film in years. I should probably watch it again.
Not bad.
And at the beginning, I was talking about independent filmmakers and their vision, and also who they are as human beings comes through in the film. And I think you see that in what Ron just shared with us, that he didn't want the film to get in the way of this moment. And he told Harry that. So giving him that opportunity was very generous of Ron because, okay, I can milk this for all it's got. Instead, he stepped back and it's a very human moment because he was very human as a director in setting it up. So I just keep pitching support independent filmmakers because there is nothing else you're going to get that's as authentic as an independent film, whether it's a narrative or a documentary. But I especially love the independent documentaries, and this is a part of it.
Because the audience will see right through it. If I had set that up and said to Harry, I'd like you to go down there, take off your hat, stand there, stare for a moment, then look, and then tell me what it was like. It would have been horrible. It just would have been terrible. You would have all seen right through it. And I didn't know what he was going to say. I had no idea. And I wasn't working with Harry. This was about halfway through the making of the film because we wanted to get him up there before it was too cold. I had no idea what he was going to do. I didn't know him well enough to, and we didn't talk about it.
And there's a good lesson there. You never script a documentary. You let things happen.
Correct.
Let things happen.
That's what people connect to.
It was very authentic. It really was. Yeah. Was the film a Doghouse film? immediately following this film that you made?
Yes, they knew Harry because they were in the horse world as well. And
Right.
I was trying to lure them in and seduce them to let me do a documentary about them while I was finishing Harry and Snowman. It took like a year.
I was wondering about that relationship because when I saw Doghouse, where did he go to sell the dogs? At the horse shows. And so I was wondering what that connection was. Yeah.
They knew who he was. I mean, they're probably 30 years younger than him, but they knew who he was. But yeah, I was having dinner with them, trying to lure them in, and because they said no. Harry was one of the only people that ever said to me when I said, "Would you like to make a documentary?" Immediately a yes. Everybody else says no. Most people say no, and as a filmmaker, most of the time those are the people you want, the ones that are really reluctant, because you know they're going to be real. They're not going to try to, fake it.
So Ron, what's next?
Well, I've got 3 things in the pipeline now. I've got one called Paragold, which is about 5 Paralympic dressage riders. Dressage riders are horse equestrians that do like ballet on a horse. There's no jumping. And it's 5 riders with various disabilities, some that have been acquired from an accident, some they were born with, but they all ride horses, and they're on their goal is to make it to the Paralympics. So that's one.
Has it been released?
No. We're still in editing on that one. We just, we haven't really quite started editing. We're starting in November with the same editor as Life in the Doghouse. And that one will be finished, in the spring. Then I've got one that is about what used to be called multiple personality disorder, was now called dissociative identity disorder. And we followed a woman with more than 40 personalities for a couple of years. And it's about—
What's it called?
It's called, what is it? Well, it doesn't really have a title yet. It's tentatively called I Am We, which is sort of the whole sense of that they're multiple. And that one will be finished probably in the spring, early summer as well. And then I'm working on one about one of the first transgender stories in the country that took place back in the 1960s in Charleston, North Carolina. And the most salacious part of the whole story was not that she had a sex reassignment operation, but that she married a black man after she did it in 1968 in Charleston. That was worse for the community.
In Charleston? Yes, that would be.
Wow.
And so that film is going to start editing in November as well. So next year I'll have 3 that are finished, but they probably won't come out until 2022.
We look forward to it. How did you get into this business? How did you ever, way back when? Did you have
Wasn't even, I wish I could mute. I'm going to mute myself. And if Alex could unmute me, I just want to yell at the dogs for 2 seconds.
That's not what rescue dogs do.
You're still muted.
Thank you, Alex. No, I just had to give him a big shush. I've got 4 rescue dogs. The film Life in the Doghouse, the first week we filmed, I rescued my 4th dog because there was 75 dogs in the house and he was so damn cute. So I started I was stuck in a hotel for a week by myself. So I fostered him and I bring him to the hotel every night after shooting. And then a week later it is a foster failure. So.
And going way back in your history, how did you get into filmmaking to begin with?
I used to be in book publishing and I lived in New York City for 15 years. And I just went to the New York Film Academy for a hobby, just to learn how to make documentary films. And I thought it would be fun. And then it was so exhilarating to me and exciting that it became a full-time hobby. And then I decided to leave publishing and turn it into a career about 10 years ago.
Fabulous.
So, but careful what you wish for, because you know what? It was a lot more fun and glamorous when it was a hobby than it is when it becomes your career. And Helen's laughing. I see her head nodding.
Exactly. So there's another question from the audience. Did the New York State horse set ever honor Harry at a social event?
You know, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm sure he was honored. He and Snowman were honored for so many things for so many years, but they didn't do anything in particular after the movie. If they did something back in the 60s when he was famous, it was something that I'm not aware of, that I wasn't around for. But they won so many awards, and I mean, they shipped, you know, snowmen through New York City to go to television appearances, and they did it. They did things that were unthinkable back then. So I'm sure they were awarded a lot of different, you know, prestigious awards and benefits around them.
Yeah. Mort and Phil, do you have other questions that people have emailed you?
I don't have anything. Phil, do you have anything
No,
on your agenda that we haven't covered?
no.
I have one more question then, if I may. Are there any questions as a filmmaker that no one has ever asked you that you wish they had asked you?
Good question.
Yeah, I wish somebody would ask me, where do I send checks? But no one ever asks me that.
I have the same for the Prescott Film Festival.
Where can I make a donation to your next film? That never comes up. You know, seriously though, I get asked so many different questions, and I, you know, what I think stands out the most for me is that most of the questions are not about me as a filmmaker or filmmaking, but they're about the subjects and about the subject matter, which is fun for me because that means I did my job right, and that you got really engrossed in the story, and that the questions are more about that. You know, I've heard almost all, there was not a question tonight that I hadn't heard, because it engages audiences in the same way. They want to know more about the kids. They want to know about the wife. Why wasn't this in there? You know, why wasn't there the other kids? So it's nice that there's a theme to it all, but I haven't been asked anything other than the money question that I wish they would.
Do you still keep in touch with Harry?
It's rather difficult because he has, I'm not sure if it's dementia or Alzheimer's, but he's, you know, he's up there in age. He's in his early 90s now, and it's difficult to hold a conversation. I'm not sure that he remembers me, but I just, for his birthday last week, I sent him 10 DVDs with a little note that said, pass these out at your, you know, where you're at your senior center to the staff, so everybody knows how important you were at one time.
Wonderful. That's wonderful.
That
So
is
that's
so,
how we stay in touch. And I ask Harriet, I will text her a couple of times a year and ask how he's doing. And she says he's hanging in there. It's just his memory's pretty much gone. She was hoping that on his birthday, when he received all these movies, that maybe that somebody would show it at his community and help jog his memory and connect him back into it.
Wow.
Fabulous.
beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we, all of us at Sagewood, thank you profusely. Thank you, Helen, profusely for your presentation this afternoon. I think we all enjoyed it, and if we could give you an applause virtually, we are doing it as we speak. No question about it.
I appreciate that and I appreciate Helen bringing me into the loop on this, and, you know, making my film available. If you know, you ever want to do another one, I'm more than happy to do it again. If you want to bring in Life in the Doghouse, or the one I did for HBO called Miss You Can Do It, I'd be more than happy to send you DVDs for either one. So just let me know.
Wow. That's a good
That would
idea.
be wonderful. We look forward to it.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you so
Helen,
much,
thank
Ron.
you very much.
Thank you, Helen. It was
You're
terrific.
welcome.
I
Have
must
a good
say,
night, everybody. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Our
Thank
next,
you.
our next presentation is going to be on October 25th, when we will have Kevin Sandler come back to us, and he is going to be reviewing the film In the Heat of the Night. And that was with Sidney Poitier and Ron Steiger, who won an Academy Award for Best Actor, and it also won Best Film of the Year. So we look forward to our Film Society enjoying that and hearing Kevin Sandler be the reviewer and the facilitator. For those of you who are not already members of the Society, you can certainly do so by going into the mailroom and taking out an application and very simply drop it in the box there. So anyway, we want to thank you all very much for attending. The film that we're going to be showing or featuring next month will be available on our own TV channel, 1960, as well as Netflix. And remember this, that you can call Phil or myself with any comments or questions that you'd like to direct to the presenter or facilitator, and we encourage you to do so. So anyway, we'll see you next month at the movies. Goodbye and good luck for now.
Thank you.